Hello, welcome back to Building Brand Advocacy. My name is Paul Archer, and I'm incredibly stoked to be here with Woozae Kim. Now, Woozae has an incredible CV working with some of the biggest brands in the world, but also some of the most cutting-edge, innovative brands as well. Woozae, until recently, you were just at Inkbox, an amazing brand who's really pushing the boundaries for something which, for me, is a very nostalgic product. You know, like this idea of temporary tattoos, but you somehow managed to make it cool and make it current for Gen Z and Gen Z. How, depending on which side of the Atlantic you are, like, how about did you start that project and that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I came on obviously at their launch, so there's already a lot of work done before I got there. But for me, it was about like repositioning what people think about when they think about semi-permanent tattoos, right? So it's like you kind of mentioned nostalgia, that's sort of our generation, but for Gen Z and millennials, it's really a kind of a new concept for them. So there's none of that like negative baggage. And also for us, that audience set, when you think about where they are in their life development, they're constantly experimenting. They're fluid, like changing who they are, pursuing their identity every day. And so for us, we were like almost a natural attachment to their lifestyle because we were giving them a tool and a platform to express a different side of themselves every 2 weeks, because the tattoos last only 2 weeks. So you can constantly go through, different personas of who you are and make different statements. So it was an amazing connection to who they are again in their sort of their inner growth. And so I was trying to position Inkbox as really a fashion and beauty accessory. So just as that group for people would change out their hair color or play with their nails or wear a different pair of shoes or change their handbags depending on their look or where they're going or what they want to say, like why not use tattoos like that, right? Why not use tattoos as a way to complete your look and accessorize your presentation and your fit that day.
And how do you sort of like tailor that so it plays into my personal likes, my tastes, things that I'm into, or my look? And obviously you've done a bunch of crossovers with other brands and with big media houses. Like, how did you sell that? Because that's quite a very different way of adding personalization, because you're selling this idea of a temporary tattoo, but that temporary tattoo could be literally anything.
Yeah, I mean, that was the beauty of it. Is like Inkbox had a catalog of over 10,000 designs on its site. And we work with a network of about 1,200 artists around the world. And I think that led to the credibility of the brand. So we weren't threatening to the tattoo community. We were an adjacency to them. And for many, a supplement of income to them, especially during COVID when all the tattoo shops were shut down. Inkbox would pay out to them for their artwork. That was before I got there. But that was something I think that really earned a lot of goodwill with that community. And so you also then see that in the design. So they are, actual tattoo designs. They look great on you. So it was almost like, for some, it could be intimidating. You get to the site and it's like 10,000 designs. How do I navigate through that? But people were able to just like, search designs or genres or things they like. And it is, like you said, a very personal thing. But the beauty of it is that what that persona is, like I said before, can change every week. So you're never like stuck into one bucket. And I think that's why having designs, over 10,000 of them, really helped to sort of like drive the hunger for the brand.
And how did you manage to tap? I mean, obviously we're all about building brand advocacy here, but how did you tap into that word of mouth through social? I mean, it must have been a goldmine, being such a visual product and one that changes every 2 weeks. You can get someone to post about it every 2 weeks. Like, how did you go about actually building a strategy around that? Because I'm going to guess there was so much opportunity. Figuring out what to do was probably harder than trying to do all these various different things.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to inherit when I got there a fantastic internal team that handled all our creator outreach and advocacy programs, and it was multi-tiered, and I can't give too many details because there's probably a little some confidentiality there. But we had one tier that was pure advocacy, meaning reaching out to customers that just love the brand, and so my team would, in a very manual way, just kind of like monitor what people were posting, looking at the quality of that, like seeing like who's, all right, they posted once, they posted twice, 3 times. And then over time, we started to like pull them together, and like, gifting was a big part of our strategy on like sending out tattoos to people without any like, without a brief. And this wasn't necessarily paid. It was just about like, hey, we see that you like the brand, like try these tattoos. Oh, and by the way, if you want to post, try this hashtag. But it wasn't like, it wasn't entirely coercive, and there was basically at will. And we found that there's just so much love for the brand. As like Trustpilot scores were always like way high in terms of satisfaction and people talking about it. So it was for us a very natural way of just tapping into the love that was out there, and harnessing that. And also as a small brand, because Inkbox is still a startup, we don't have huge marketing dollars, right? So and content is key, and so they were a great tool for us to generate new content that we could use. So like I said, we would send product out there and watch what they produce, and for the ones that we thought were just like really stellar, then we kind of like bring them into the brand, and then kind of they would evolve, and over time, and then some would become paid creators if they got to a certain quality level. But it was a great way of the sourcing, but more than that, just building community. That was really it. Is like for us, advocacy was about celebrating the audience that celebrates us, and really having it be, working for both parties, and that just felt very authentic and organic.
I love that. If you're thinking of, if you were advising a brand today, and they've got 100 grand for customer acquisition to sort of spend, they can have ads and everything in the mix. What do you think the budget should be towards gifting?
Well, I guess it depends on the cost of your product, right? Luckily, our product, our cost of goods was pretty low. But if you go to like fashion houses where, the item could, the cost could be $50, there's only so many you can be sending out there, right? So beauty brands, lipstick costs about like $2, so they could probably send more. So we'll start there with like budget wise, what can you afford to send out? And then I think you just need to look at strategy. What's your objectives? Is it really just to build community? And to me, that's more of a long tail approach, right? It's not like immediate returns. Whereas some influencer strategies is about they want to get those hits, they want to get those likes like right away. So you really need to balance like what is your short-term and long-term strategy.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And you've been doing this in a lot of other brands in terms of it's not just Inkbox, you're at Calvin Klein, and we're a part of some really interesting partnerships there. Like, first tell us about a little snapshot of some of the partnerships you worked on there, and like how would you measure the results of those partnerships with the brand? Were you able to track it down to revenue? Was it almost impossible? What were you using as a proxy if that was the case? I'd love to know.
Yeah, quite often, sometimes it's actually not about revenue. It's about building brand relevancy. That was the sort of the challenge and opportunity at Calvin. Is like when I was brought in, it was like Calvin used to be one of the most iconic fashion brands in the 80s and 90s, right? And then fast forward to like, when did I get there? 2014. Wasn't as hot as they were. So it was about like, all right, how do we reignite love for the brand, get us inserted into the cultural lexicon, getting people talking about it and caring about it again. And so a lot of the partnerships and sort of collaborations we were doing were just about like getting the brand back on the radar of our audiences and new audiences, especially. So I think it varies. Some are more commercially oriented. Like when I was at Mac, I did a collaboration with Nicki Minaj. It was before her first album, Pink Friday, came out. And so we did a capsule, like a single lipstick with her that she chose a color. We worked with her on it, and then we launched it on 3 consecutive Fridays. It sold out the first Friday in like 8 minutes. It crashed the North America website. So that was a huge, that was a great commercial win with also great like brand benefits. So you're always hoping for both, but you may not. But the high level, it really is about like building that relevancy. And like I think a lot of times why a brand will work or partner with someone is to kind of like trade brand equity. It's like they're hot, we're hot, or we're hotter, they're less. And you just like want to play off each other for mutual benefit. And I think that's why you go into these relationships.
And you were SVP of global brand marketing at Calvin. Like, how did that play internationally? Nicki Minaj, she's presumably the majority of that is that North American eyeballs. Did that translate into Europe, into Asia, like, and
Yeah, we
how?
did launch it in other markets as well. But to your point, yeah, it was selective on where we thought she would resonate, and where her audiences and her Barbs and her Kens were, which is kind of funny because we're in Barbie land now, talking about Nicki Minaj again. Full circle. But yeah, I mean, it is really important to look at who is relevant. It's like, you think about like Asian markets were playing with advocacy like on a much higher level, even before like, Europe and North America. It's like they call it KOLs, key opinion leaders. And so these are, high level celebrities that they would align with to push their product. It's like, I remember one experience at Mac was the team in Korea were developing, these lipstick colors, and they gifted it to this really famous actress there. After her wearing it on the show, it's sold out in Seoul in all stores in like a week. It's like the power of KOLs in Asia is this next level to what happens here. It's like, but it's tougher there because it's also expensive. Like it is definitely a pay to play. Like you cannot just like give to someone like they want to get paid for this stuff. So at Mac, I had this fantastic team, artist relations team, and they were spread across different disciplines, different industries, film, TV, music. And so their job was to build relationships with everyone that was backstage or in the production. So whether it's fashion houses doing a show or, film production, working with the makeup artist, working with the stylist, working with the creative directors, and just always being present and providing, Mac artists, Mac product, and being co-creators of that design. So that was a very organic approach of advocacy, and really working with the people that were of influence in getting these things judged. So that was influencers before influencers were a thing. And I think that was a big part of the success of Mac and why it was so beloved, because we were just always present and always there.
And I mean, that was obviously a few years ago. That was on the early doors of social media. Well, like now it's very different. I mean, you mentioned about the KOLs in Asia, and actually it's for influencers, Nicki Minaj being another one, and then there is the micro influencers, and they've already been relatively well tapped out. The prices that are being demanded by these people to work with tend to be quite high, often higher than the value that can be gleaned from them. Where do you think the opportunity is? Particularly interested to see what you've learned from the Asian market of like cracking into just normal people like you and I. How can a brand turn their customers, their fans, their advocates, but into a channel in a way that is measurable, that's predictable, as you would be if you were to pay a KOL or an influencer to do some work?
Yeah, I think any organization should have a multi-tier strategy, right, for marketing. So you're going to have your very high-level talent that you pay X amount of money to go out there and be your ambassador or speak to you. And either they're shooting their own content or you do an actual shoot with them, right? And TBD and how long that relationship is. And then you should always have your very like kind of street level approach where it's more organic, and it's like you said, the customers that fall in love with you. What I love about like today, and I was talking about like building brand advocacy, is like that's sort of like a central philosophy that I've held my entire career, right? Because I think ultimately as a marketer, as a brand builder, my job is to build brand love, right? You want your customers to be emphatic about you. You want them constantly to celebrate you and champion you. And that becomes your word of mouth. And that is a marketing vehicle on its own, right? And quite often is under leveraged. But it is really about like building that active relationship. That's also why I like advocacy, because it's not passive. Like you could have a customer that like, comes in because you had a great performance ad, like talking about a sale, right? Or, some product thing. And it's like, they convert and they buy it and then they move on, right? Doesn't mean they love your brand or they really care about your brand. It's like, they got a great deal, which is awesome because it helps your bottom line, right? You drive conversion, you drive a sale, but in terms of long-term value, you want brand advocacy because you want someone who's going to come back on a regular basis. And even if they don't come back and buy, that they're talking about you. They're going to tell their friends, their family, whoever, they're going to post about it, about an amazing experience. So they love this product. It's like that to me as a brand guy, that's what gets me excited. And that's what I want is like people to fall in love with the brand to the point where they're just annoying and can't stop talking about it.
It sounds all well and good, but I mean, that is the dream. Where do you see people get it wrong?
By where I see, I don't know about wrong. Again, I think it's about like not just doing one thing. It's about hitting all those levels. I have seen a lot of brands only focus on the high. And it's like they go after that person that has 1 million+ followers and like, they have one post and they think they've won. It's like, well, I don't know if you've won. Like, yeah, that person has a lot of influence, but they're also doing that for 20 other brands. So I question sometimes the authenticity of that. But again, goes back to what your business objectives are. If you're trying to build scale and get someone's, XY eyeballs, great, right? But for me, it's like you got to balance that with the authenticity piece. Like find the people that are doing it because they actually care about you, and they're not just getting a paycheck.
And how do you understand the difference between, is it simply the fact that you're looking in a different place, as in you're looking in existing customers, people who are following you on social, people who are in your CRM, or do you think even within those you can find inauthenticity?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a little bit of both. I think you have to do the homework. So if it's your general customer, your base, looking at what they're saying, where they're saying it, and engaging in them in their own channels where it's most relevant for them. But then even for the people that you're paying at a high level, it's like be more selective about who you're paying money to. Like why are they doing it? What's their motivation? And how authentically are they going to speak for you? Some are great at it. Some, yeah, they do it for 20 of the brands, but they really do care about your brand, and they're excited. So that's a win. But to just do a blanket approach, I think that's where I question the validity. I'm going to get in so much trouble. I'm going to get canceled by like other CMOs and be like, no, my CEO heard what you said and they cut my budgets. But for me, it's very much about quality versus quantity. And I think that's always sort of like the balance you need to like, you look at as a senior leader is like, what am I getting out of it? Is it scale, or is it like the purity or the authenticity of the work?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And actually we see that in a lot of the programs we run on Joule, is that first of all, that they always get a question, which is why are you here? And it's a really niche question. It's like, well, and it's, well, or it's a few things that are designed to catch people up, but people who genuinely love the brand will always get, and other people won't. And then they have like 2 or 3 tiers of activities they need to do and videos about the brand that they need to watch before they get the chance to actually get an affiliate link or to any free product or anything like that. And it's and actually what we've found is compared to, is like it will get rid of 50% of the people who would have been there and would have probably just taken a freebie or a payment or something and maybe not done anything for it. And the ones that you get left, they then not only do they complete the activities, but they're fans, right? You've made it hard enough that only the true fans will stay. And when they stay, the content they create is incredible, the reach and the authenticity. So it's something which a lot, when you talked about scale, everyone leans into scale, don't they? But actually you should be trying to reduce it as in every single stage possible to make it hard, because what you get back is you get the real gems. You're panning for gold, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really filtering, right? So looking at that and see who's going to like rise to the top and who are really working hard for you. And in the end, like the consumer, broader consumer sees it, they feel it. They know if someone is like, real in what they're talking about or what they're pushing versus like, oh, that person got a lot of money for this. Good for them. But, I don't really believe you. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think that makes absolute sense. So like when looking at advocacy and trying to activate people to tell that brand story, with a brand like Inkbox, for example, or Calvin and Mac, like there's such a various different brands. You've got fashion, you've got beauty, you've got, well, as you said, tattoos in the fashion sort of space. Like the people that you are activating and the people that you are getting to tell your story, do you find that you have to have control over the narrative that they say, or do you often just get the product in their hands and then sit back and let them tell your story in a way that is authentic to them?
It's a little bit of both. I think again, it depends on what tier you're in. If it's really just sort of your base pure advocates, it's like let them do their thing. It's like because you're not really compensating for them. They're just engaging because they care about you. And for some of them, maybe it's like this is the beginning of their career. as a creator or influencer. So you're giving a great pathway for that. Just let them go on. You might provide a little bit of guidance, like give them some examples of things that have been done in the past, but you're not really being prescriptive. And then when you get to the tiers where you are paying people a lot of money, then they need to follow a brief. And you need to like know what you're getting out of it. And I think for a lot of brands, sometimes that's hard. It's scary to let go and put your faith into the hands of someone you've never met before, right? Especially for like high fashion brands, I think that gets scary. But let's be honest, they're going to be out there doing it anyways. So you either be part of a conversation and get on board and enjoy the process, or you stand on the sidelines. Personally, I'd rather be part of the conversation. So
that makes total sense. And what did you find was the biggest shift in mindset going from big organizations like Mac and Calvin to someone the same size of Inkbox?
Interesting. I mean, obviously the budgets are different, right? So how you spend is different. But Inkbox had ambitions of being a big brand, of being iconic, right? You know, Inkbox is creating a whole new category and creating new behavior and, you know, generating desire with this very cool audience. So I don't think the size necessarily impacts sort of the ambition of what, you know, Inkbox is trying to do. You know, one thing I'll say is like, being a small company and a startup is very nimble. So we were able to move very quickly and make decisions like in one meeting. Whereas you get into large organizations, there's a lot of red tape and a lot of stakeholders, and you have a pre-meeting before the meeting and then a post-meeting after the meeting. So like a lot of that going on. Whereas in startup land is like you're more in like let's get it done mode, which has its pluses and negatives. But I think probably that's the biggest difference is sort of the speed at which you're doing things and engaging. But the ambitions are the same.
And sort of through that evolution of your career as a marketer, the hot demographic would have been the millennials way back when. Now it's Gen Z. Have you had to massively change the way that you think? I know obviously the platforms have changed from Facebook to TikTok, etc. But is there a different mindset, or the same, or the first principles the same about how you market to them?
I think a lot of the principles are the same. Yes, they're different generations, and with that, there are some just cultural nuances go on like what they respond to, and definitely the platforms, the ways to reach them has changed dramatically over the years. But even early on, one of my first jobs was at Virgin Mobile, and so that was a brand completely focused on the youth market. So I've been talking to young people across my years, and the generations of that youth change, but it's still the mindset of like the reason why that generation or that audience excites me is that's how you generate heat, because they're more engaged, they're very vocal, they're going to be talking about you, they want to be involved, they're not shy in speaking their mind, and I think when you have that audience behind you, it just sparks conversations and you create that cultural relevance. And that bubbles up to the older people that are sort of a tipping with the tipping point concept is you want to start with the core and have that kind of like spill out into the broader audiences. But you want to hit that core audience first because they're the ones that are sort of like guiding trends and creating conversations that everyone else is trying to join. So I think starting with youth is a great way of just like starting new ideas.
And then how do you expand on that? How do you start with that as your core, but then also serve 42-year-old mums and dads?
Well, I think it's about like the voice, speaking in a way that is very natural, organic to your core audience without disenfranchising someone who's older. The trick is though, like someone who's 40 wishes they were still in their 20s, right? But someone in their 20s does not want to be in their 40s. So it's about like finding that balance of still being aspirational to both, but being truthful to that original core audience.
Would you recommend some brands that just sometimes you just sell to an older demographic and that's just what your product is?
Know your brand. Some brands are, geared towards Gen Z. And it's funny, you have like some established brands, I can't remember off the top of my head, who are like, oh, I have to get on Snapchat or I have to get on TikTok. And it's like, well, actually, why? Like, yes, it is a hot platform and a lot of people are on there, but is your audience on there? It's not about an age, it's about a lifestyle and a point of view. That's why I think it's important for a lot of brands. What I've done in my career is like create like segmentations or personas. So you're gonna have like multiple, audiences in your brand. So what is it about that profile that's going to resonate? And so you might have different product that's going to cater to those different audiences. You might not have something that's going to resonate with everyone. That's fine. It's going to resonate to 2/3 of the audience. And then you have something else that's going to resonate to that 1/3. Everyone can eat here, right? So you're going to have something for everything. When I got to Mac, it's like one of their core values is all ages, all races, all sexes. And when I heard that, I was like, as a marketer, I was like, well, that's impossible. Like, you can't be everything to everyone. It's like, but once I got in and really saw sort of like customer data and talking to them and like being in industry and like working with the artist relations team, it really was true because Mac was about a point of view and an attitude. It was about celebration. It was about self-expression. It was about creativity. It's about color. And that can resonate and be true for anyone, whether you're 15 or 80. We work with Iris Apfel, like she was fantastic and one of the most vibrant and badass people I've ever like met or encountered. And it's like, she could give someone in their 20s a run for their money. So I think
How old is she?
well, I think she just turned, she's in her 90s.
Wow.
Might be, yeah, think. Oh, sorry, Iris, if I'm getting this wrong. But she's just so alive. And that really came through for the brand because, Mac is about that. So I would say like really start with who you are as a brand, who your audience is, what you stand for, and then go find people that are similar. And that's not necessarily tied to a name, to an age or a number.
And it kind of comes full circle to what you're saying about that authenticity piece is if they are there because they love the brand and they love the content, it's the right match. And same thing, if you're there and you could be 90, but if you spend all your time consuming TikTok content, you'll know how TikTok works. It's the people who are trying to play in areas that they don't feel authentically is the place that they want to spend their time. So I think if it's not interesting to them, it probably isn't going to be interesting to anyone else if they create or they engage with it on the wrong level.
And what's been really fun to see is the sort of the second life for a lot of older people coming in. They're called the grandfluencers. So grandmothers and grandfathers, right? It's like they're coming in and they're engaging these platforms that are new to them, and they're so endearing and so fun and so excited to be doing it and like find a way to connect with probably their grandchildren or younger people. And it's like it just feels so real and it's beautiful. So it's like, yeah, back to my point, it's like it's not about age, it's about like a mindset and what you're talking about and how you celebrate that.
Yeah, I've not actually gone down that rabbit hole, but I think I know what I'm going to be.
It's so fun. It is just so cool. It just makes you happy. It just makes you smile. Like, good for you. Get yours, get out there. It's never over. Just enjoy your life.
Amazing. So, one last question from me. So, what are the handful of things that you would recommend every brand builder starts working on from today, based probably on the principles of our conversation we just had? I can predict, but I'd love to hear them from you.
Yeah, I think key number one is like understand your brand, like build that foundation. Like, what are you standing on? So like, what's your purpose? What's your core values? What's your mission statement? And that is a tool that you're going to need through everything you're doing, because that's your brand filter, right? So that's going to help you decide who you work with, who you don't work with, partnerships, advocates, all that stuff, because that's going to be how you measure if this is brand right or not. Some organizations may not think that way, but that's always been central to how I've approached my roles across my career. And luckily, I've been in organizations that also like respect and understand brand. So for brand builders, I would say start there because that's the fundamentals, and then that's how you build from there. It's like when one of my early jobs was at this fantastic agency called Fallon Duffy, and so they built the brand planning principle, or one of the first people that built brand planning principles. It was like we would have some clients to come in and be like, "Hey, I want a Super Bowl spot," and it's like, if you're an agency, that's like the creme of the creme, like yes. But we'd say, well, that's awesome, great, you have that ambition, but let's start and figure out who you are as a brand first, and then figure out like, how do we tell your story? How do we express it? That might be a Super Bowl spot, or it might not be, right? So it's like, let's not go straight into execution without understanding who you are, who the audience is, what makes you special, what makes you unique, and then what is the best way to connect you with your consumers.
Amazing tip. Thank you so much for your time, Woozae. That's been fantastic. Thank you for coming and building brand advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Build that brand love. So.